Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where you meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners. This is the 45th episode of the Shipping Podcast. It's the 45th time that I sat down with someone and spoken about the shipping industry. And this time, it's a new sector of the industry. It's the flag state. So before we go into this episode, which is the 6th out of 7 that I've made at the CMA in New York in March this year, I think we need to talk a little bit about what is a flag state. The flag state of a commercial vessel is the state under whose laws the vessel is registered or licensed. Ships must be registered in the ship register of the country whose flag it's flying. You can easily Google statistics of the flag states, where you will see how many ships each flag state has in its register, and so on. Before we go into the interview, I think also some abbreviations that we are used to and which we usually throw around us needs to be explained. SOLAS, that is SOLAS, it's the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. MLC, that's the Maritime Labour Convention. ISM, the International Safety Management Code. And ISPS, International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. But let me introduce you to William Gallagher, the President of International Registries. That is the Marshall Islands flag state. We met on the 23rd of March this year. And this is what he has to say. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bill Gallagher. I'm president of International Registries, and we are the administrator for the Marshall Islands Registry.
How did you come into the shipping industry?
It's interesting. My father worked in a shipyard in Baltimore, where I grew up. So we always had shipping in the family. He was the U.S. Navy and then went to the shipyard after the war. And so every day he was talking to me about repairing ships. That was his thing. And I wanted to get into an international business. You know, I went to college. My father was adamant that I go to college. And I went to school and I wound up studying in Germany and worked for the Bundestag, an internship. And I met a man there, young man, who is a lifelong friend, Jean-Jacques Mitton. He was, we moved back to the States, of course, and he went back to his university, and I went back to my university, and then we met up again in Washington because he came to law school and in that area, and I was at the University of Maryland at the time.
So what did you study?
I studied international relations, and I had political science, German, and history in my undergraduate as minors, German language. And so then Jean and I became reacquainted because he was going to law school in D.C. and I was going to law school in Baltimore. And so we became friends, and he got a job with the registry after law school, and I was working actually in the securities industry, you know, stocks and bonds for a brokerage house in Baltimore, and in their legal and compliance department. And he said, you know, I got a job with the registry. He said, he knew I was studying maritime law also. He said, this is actually a better fit for you than it is for me. And so I went down for an informational interview, and that was 25 years ago, and here I am. So it's just one of those things. And, you know, we were talking last night at an ABS dinner. I was talking to some colleagues there, and everybody says the same thing. Once you get into shipping, you just don't get out. It's something that gets into your blood, and you love it. And so it's I can't believe it's been 25 years. It's amazing. It's been an amazingly, you know, really cool ride, so to speak.
And you got it through your family, because either you do that or you just step on that banana leaf.
Well, it was funny. You know, what really sold me on the industry, I'll never forget, is I went to Dalian, China in 1996, and that's when China shipbuilding was just starting. And I remember, of course, as I mentioned, I was very interested in international business. And I was doing a closing for a Liberian flag at the time. It was a German owner. The company that was the superintendents on the job were from a company out of Japan. that had Indian superintendents. He had, of course, a Chinese yard. I gave the documentation over for the closing to a Dutch master who had essentially a Croatian crew. And I started counting all the nationalities that were involved in this transaction. General cargo ship in Dalian, China. And I thought, my God, there's nothing more international than shipping. I never looked back since then. I never thought of anything else because I really loved the whole idea. And it was actually, frankly, it was really kind of cool being in a Chinese shipyard in 1996. Things have changed a lot, but I mean, back then, I was walking through the shipyard and guys weren't even wearing hard hats or steel-toed shoes and things, those basic stuff that my father was a safety man at the shipyard. And of course, look where Chinese shipyards are today and, the good work that they're doing in China, of course, Korea and Japan, in shipbuilding. So that's really how my journey began.
Okay. So for people who doesn't know anything about shipping, what does the registry do?
Yeah, the registry gives the nationality. It imparts the nationality onto the ship. As the ship is actual territory of that sovereign nation. So when you're flying a Marshall Islands flag, you are a piece of Marshall Islands sovereignty floating around the world, trading. And what we do is, of course, as a registry, is we register the ship. Most ships are very expensive, as we all know, and so there's a lot of financing involved. So we actually do the mortgage recordation, and the security instruments are recorded, which protects the banks. The lawyers are involved in that side of it, the ship finance lawyers. Then we also certify the crew. We do, license the officers, and we also, of course, provide seamen's books and identifications for the crew members themselves. And then, of course, we have an obligation to inspect the ships, and we interact very closely with the class societies who work on behalf of the flag state and ensuring the standards are kept. And that starts right from the very beginning of the building of the vessel, and of course throughout the life cycle of the vessel. So we are actually always looking over our fleet and looking through the class records and making sure that the vessels stay at a high quality, because that's what we're really about as a registry. Everybody talks about quality, and it's kind of like an overused word, really. But we really work very hard to ensure that quality. For instance, the U.S. Coast Guard will release sometime this spring the Qualship 21 designations, and it's a very stringent standard. And we know that we made the grade again, and some other major flags have not. So we are very proud of the fact that we are hanging in there, and that's our report card. How do you get, you can say you're a quality registry, but when a port state control, like the Paris MOU or the Tokyo MOU, have you firmly whitelisted like we are, actually our position is improving on those whitelists, then that's evidence of the fact that your ship owners and the registry are running really a quality fleet.
So at what time in the process of building a ship do the ship owner decide which flag it's going to be?
Typically when they sign the contracts with the yards, they designate a flag. Doesn't mean that they won't change. Sometimes some yards will just put a flag in there, and the owner, once the vessel is delivered, that's when the final decision on the flag is made. And typically, yes, if they have Marshall Islands during the building process, typically they stay with Marshall Islands. But there are times that they change, from the flag that was designated when the build was going in. And certainly on some of the more highly technical vessels like LNGs, our technical group and class are much more involved from the very beginning, in the planning stages. And so, of course, there's a lot of back and forth between the owners and their reps and the designers of the vessels and things like that. So pretty much if they designate your flag when they're working with you like that, they're going to stay with you once they deliver the vessel.
So a ship owner doesn't change flag on his ships like insurance?
No, it's a lot involved, because once you have the crew certifications involved, then it's a class event. You have to deal with the class society again, because now you're going to another flag. So it's while we do get a lot of secondhand tonnage, coming into the registry, there is cost involved in changing flags. So, and not necessarily from the flag state, but other, ancillary charges that they're going to get by changing flags. So no, the point is you have the owners register with you. You want to keep their business, so you give them the best service that they possibly can get. Because the thing that we always recognize with our fleet is that the key thing is always to keep the ships moving, especially in these markets. When the vessel gets tied up because there's a port state control problem, and there's no flag state representatives to support the owner, that he can lose several days of charter hire, and that's time is money in our business. So we have a different approach than most flags. I mean, no flag has the international network that we have. We have 28 offices worldwide. We just opened in the Philippines. That was our newest office. We're looking at something in Australia, possibly, which would be a departure. We've never had an office, and we're looking in Brisbane right now, considering it. It's about finding the right people first, and the right mix of people, then we'll build an office around them. That's how we always find the man or woman and then build the office around them. But what that does, it enables the owner-operators to get support from the flag in whatever time zone, language. It helps. It also, frankly, helps on the marketing side. You have a situation where you'll have like for instance, a really good example is our Korean office. 7 years ago, we had no tonnage out of Korea. Now it's like our fourth largest market and jockeying for third place. I mean, really, we have a lot of tonnage out of Korea. And that's because we have an exceptionally good man working for us in Korea who we built an office around. And he's very tied in with the community, the shipping community, and people know him, they trust him, and they give us business. So it's in there, for lack of a better way of putting it, I like to call it home cooking. There's nothing like home cooking. So I think the days of the flag state being all the way on the other side of the world, you have Asia operating on a different business day, and having a flag state where all its services are coming from the East Coast of the United States, those days are long gone as far as I'm concerned, if you want to do it successfully. And I learned that personally, through you kind of learn from your own experience in this business. And when I was a young man growing up in the vessel registry in the 90s, I was the Far East liaison. So I spent a lot of time in Hong Kong, and I used to get very frustrated because an owner would ask me some technical questions that I couldn't handle, and I would feed them back to the U.S. And if the guys didn't get on it right away, I would lose 2 business days. And it was very frustrating to me, and I thought, well, why do we have an office if we can't do all the work here? And so now we have 360 employees worldwide. Plus, I think it's close to 375 now, actually. But about 150 of those are in the U.S., and then the rest are in, like, for instance, we have 40 people working for us in Piraeus. London is about 25 people. Hong Kong is about 30 people. So we have very strong, full-service offices worldwide, and that's really the secret to the success. People ask, why did you grow so much? And I think it's very simple. We provide the service. We just don't say that we're a quality registry and we give good service and pay lip service, to that, but we actually back it up with the people and the infrastructure. And as the registry has grown, we have put the resources back in to the registry to enable it to become bigger, stronger, and more competitive.
Is it like, P&I clubs, they have sort of a profile. Some of them are into cruise and some of them are into tankers or whatever.
Right.
Is it the same with flag states?
For our flag state, we are very strong in bulkers and tankers. Container ships not as strong. Maybe that's about 10% of our fleet. Cruise ships are growing for us now, but we only have 10 cruise ships. So yes, you can say that to a certain extent. Some of the smaller flags may have a niche in, say, the offshore, but we have a footprint everywhere. We from offshore to the cruise industry, and I really think to be a large and successful registry, you have to be able to hire. And having said that, it's a really good question because you also have to hire the expertise from the various sectors. We have several fellows that have, were chief engineers on cruise line vessels like Holland America, Norwegian Cruise Lines, and that kind of Royal Caribbean. And we have, of course, several folks, especially out of our Houston office, who are working in the offshore sector and in Brazil. And they, for instance, we have a gentleman that had worked in the offshore sector for DNV for more than 30 years, working for us and running our Houston office, a gentleman by the name of Charles McCarty. And that's the kind of thing that we've brought in a lot of expertise. Early days of the ship registry, what I saw was that you would have a lot of maybe legal people that could do the registration work, and a lot of Coast Guard, ex-Coast Guard types, port state control people working for the registry. Now we have bankers, we have ship managers, we have class. We draw from the industry in general. Because as a flag state, you kind of touch into all the sectors because you're not only dealing with the technical aspects and the marine safety aspects of the vessel's trading, but you're also dealing with the legal side, registration, recordation of mortgages and things of that nature. So you kind of get the full gambit. And you need people that have expertise and all around. So, yeah, I think I like our profile of our fleet. Yes, we just brought in another cruise vessel, and we have another brand new one coming in from another brand, which is really exciting for us. So yeah, we're very excited about the possibilities. We just expanded our Florida office for that particular reason.
You got applaud for that?
I got an applause. Isn't that nice? Right on cue.
So I wonder, you've been around for a while. What are the biggest changes you have seen within the shipping industry?
I think very simply is regulation. The regulatory environment is very, very stringent. If you look at the way ships were trading in the 70s and 80s and the early 90s and look at it today, it's a completely different world. With the environmental regulations, certainly, SOLAS, MLC, all the things that have come along, ISM Code, ISPS, has made it completely different as far as the way, you have to approach shipping. So you really have to have a strong regulatory group. What we had before, we had one guy who really looked after the IMO issues back 25 years ago, and a gentleman in London who did the same. So we had a couple of people involved in regulatory. Now we have a full regulatory department that comprises of not only people from the States or the UK, but also our worldwide group. And because the regulatory environment is so stringent that you really need to stay on top of it. And there's a lot of interpretation. You have ballast water is the big one right now that's coming down, and flag states are involved in not only enforcing the rules, but also helping the owners through the interpretations of what's coming out of the IMO. So we really look at the IMO as an opportunity to do a good job on behalf of the industry by sending the right experts there, so that when there is regulation, it's smart regulation, not just regulation for regulation's sake, which happens. And there's a lot of so a lot of folks are complaining about the amount of regulation that is in the industry. I think it gets to a point of over-regulation, and so that's the biggest change I've seen.
And what about the future? How do you see the future for shipping in general?
Well, the world population continues to grow. Yes, we have, right now we have a severe downturn in the offshore and the bulk trade markets. But again, it's cyclical and it'll come back. So I'm very optimistic. I see interesting things like LNG as fuel, and see a lot of these green initiatives that are coming in that actually work for a number of things, not only the environment, but also the efficiency of the vessels and cost savings. So I find that very exciting. I think, there are some challenges. I think having qualified personnel at sea is very difficult to maintain the standards. So you have to worry about whether there'll be enough qualified officers to man the vessels, and certainly the ratings too. But I think, generally speaking, I'm very optimistic, because I think, of course, when you look at more than 90% of the trade in the world is carried on vessels, and we still are developing this world, and there's more and more population. There's going to be more and more need for ships.
Yeah, I agree with you. What about the digitalization? I just attended a workshop on the smart ship. Is that also going to develop our industry? Or?
Actually, I'll be honest with you, I really haven't been following that one too much, the smart ship. So I didn't attend that. No, it's okay. No. So this is where vessels are going to be, lower manning, and they're actually going to almost be unmanned vessels and that kind of thing?
Yeah, in a way, but also to be able to take smart decisions, because you have got more data to build your decisions on when it comes to management and things like that.
It's interesting when you look at the communication with the vessels themselves. Back in the day, the vessel went off to sea, and you didn't have that constant contact with the home office. Now, of course, the DPAs are constantly in conversation with the vessels, and now you have LRIT, long-range identification tracking. That came out of actually the ISPS Code, and that was after 9/11. Because you used to have vessels trading all over the world, and people wouldn't precisely know where the vessel was. And now, of course, we have our complete fleet on a worldwide global mode. We can just look at the deltas and bear down on it and see that that's a certain vessel tanker from one of our tanker owners that's off the coast of West Africa. And all you have to do is type in the name of the vessel, and it'll come up. Wherever it is trading in the world. So we know where all our fleet is at all times now. And that's a huge difference than, when I started 25 years ago. I remember, like, if you had a problem ship and you wanted to inspect it, you're worried about them maintaining the standards. You didn't know if it was off the coast of West Africa or not, or if it was trade coming up the Chesapeake Bay to Baltimore, unless the ship owner informed you. Now, of course, we can see where all the vessels are, and of course we know when we see our owners and operators are doing a good job communicating with their vessels, and that helps with safety and certainly the safe and secure running of the vessels.
Shipping is sometimes looked upon as the invisible industry. No one knows about this. Do you have any ideas of how we could improve that?
It's funny, every conference, pretty much every CMA, this question comes up: how do we improve the image of shipping? I mean, I remember, like, you would see some of the oil companies would have some commercials on TV about shipping and that kind of thing. I think you have to reach people in the modern world through social media, and really, but it takes it takes money, it takes a unified approach, and I think that, unfortunately, I don't see that changing a whole lot. I mean, people don't really realize that when they pull up to a gas station in this country, in the United States, and they put gasoline in their car, they don't think about the whole chain, the logistics change that led to that gasoline being in that pump. So and certainly shipping being a large part of that. So no, I just think that's kind of par for the course we're on, really. Because
I think we don't only want to be famous for our failures.
Yes.
We want to be famous for doing something good, contributing.
Well, I've always felt the same way. Someone made a comment in the tanker forum the other day, that you can have an aircraft casualty and very severe and a large loss of life, and after a year or so, everybody forgets about it. And he said, but if you have one oil spill, everybody remembers it. And of course, some of the more famous oil spills and things of that nature. And if you look at where the industry has gone over the last 20, 25 years, I mean, it's a very clean industry in comparison from where it was before, and very efficient and very safe. And unfortunately, that message doesn't get out.
No, I agree. So who would you be interested in listening to in a podcast? Who do you think I should meet the next time?
Well, I mean, I think John Fredrickson's always interesting because he's a leader in the industry. But the major owners and the leaders of the major companies, and even the smaller companies, I mean, they're very, one thing that notice about this industry when you meet people, that you're dealing with very highly intelligent people and very motivated, a lot of energy, and very inspirational type of people when you see people in our industry. And I think we all feed upon that. But yeah, sure, some of the real pioneers that are out there, like John Fredrickson, I think it would be a good one. Comes to mind right away.
We'll see if he would agree to be on a podcast. I don't know.
Yeah. But you have others. I mean, Bugbee and what he's done, and his partners at Scorpio, and some of these other real success stories that we've seen in the industry. It's and of course, I would just go down. We're at CMA. I would just go down the list of Commodores, because that's really, these are the leaders of our industry, and these are the people that inspire us and the people that we follow, really. And so, I mean, just that list there, which includes, it's like a who's who of shipping, as you know. Patty Rogers this year. It's another great example. So those are the people I would like to hear from.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you very much, and appreciate it.
Did it get a little bit technical for you? I don't think so. I think now you know almost everything there is to know about why a ship is flying a flag. I need to wave another flag here. Have you actually answered the survey that I asked you in the last episode? You need to go to www.survey.libsyn.com/shippingpodcast and answer the survey. The reason for me asking this of you is that advertisers and possible cooperation partners wants to know a little bit more about you. I know that the Shipping Podcast has been downloaded 45,000 times since I started. Yes, that is almost 45,000 hours of listening. I know that there are approximately 3,500 downloads each month. And I know how you listen. Most of you still listen through the desktop. I hope you have realized that there is a way to listen from your mobile when you're moving around or flying or driving or whatever you do. You can just go into the shippingpodcast.com website, and I have explained there in detail how to do it. I also know that you are in 129 different countries, and the top 5 is Sweden, of course, because I nag at everyone that I meet, the US, the UK, Norway, and Germany. But I don't know your age. Are you all young and beautiful, or are there any in my age who has gotten addicted yet? You need to help me with this. Answer the survey. Then it will be possible to compare us to any other line of business. I am bringing podcasting into shipping, but I'm also bringing shipping into the podcasting industry. So they are also very interested in knowing who you are. Please help me with this. I will leave a link in the show notes and on the website for you to actually go and answer 5 questions. Please. During next week, I will be joining the Vista International AGM and conference for the first time ever on board a cruise ship from Fort Lauderdale to the Bahamas and back again. There will be 400 women on board, and I know so many of them, and I have actually pinpointed a few of them to be guests on the Shipping Podcast in the future. I hope you enjoyed this episode. There are 44 more to listen to. But until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast where the maritime professionals are talking about their everyday job.